Chris.
And thank you very much for coming in. I'm absolutely amazed at the amount of calls we had today with men sharing similar stories. I know you can't solve their problems, but you must see this a lot, Donald.
We do. It's a significant pattern. I think people, and I do this myself, underestimate the connection that men do feel when they have a child, and we discount that, and even men themselves, and find that after separation, just how much that loss of day-to-day activity really, really creates a vacuum in themselves.
And actually, do you think that's part of the problem, part of the societal issues that we face, where the perception is that it won't matter for men as much as it would for the woman involved? Is that a fair comment?
I think everybody is unconsciously biased towards doing that, and that's part of the situation that erupts. And then there's the situation as well, the possession is 9/10 of the law, in the sense of women are generally the primary carer, and that position of primary carer sets up a situation after a breakup where the men are generally the ones excluded. And they often, what comes along with that loss is the loss of the home, which is a huge thing. Now they have to set up a new place for their children to come and see them. They often lose the friends, the family friends, because the woman's been the main connector. So it's a lot of women as well. I hope I don't sound like I'm beating up women for this, but they say 70% of relationships are initiated by women. Breakups are initiated by women, and with younger children it's something like 80 or 90%. So guys are often unprepared. They have an incredible range of burdens that all erupt at once. And it's a lot to ask of them to just get over it, or somehow all of a sudden confront this large issue of going to a court process.
You say something very interesting about the subconscious or unconscious bias, that obviously that many places in society, we all have this, particularly when it comes to some of the job functions of a woman, but it's almost taboo to talk about the bias that goes against men. Do you think we're getting better at that? Because men, we like to be blokes, we don't want to talk about our issues and problems, so that also compounds the issue of going through the legal process, of showing emotion, or saying, hey, I would like to have access to my child.
Definitely. Well, I think there is a transition that's happening in society for all ages. I mean, that's a culture where we're softening and becoming more democratic.
Is it happening in the court process, though?
That's where I think what happens is, I don't think that's turned about, and I think it's reinforced by the fact that it's largely women that are in one position and men in the other, and that creates a situation where it becomes all men are like that. And one thing I noticed, I'm a social worker, and I really noticed the guys have not had any engagement with any care service or support service of any kind, so all of a sudden they're confronted with this issue where they have to account for themselves. They don't have somebody who's recorded their story, so they can write a letter to the court saying, yes, I saw Brian, 3 times prior to their breakup. They don't often have that kind of information that helps them when they go through the family court process. So if somebody does make a false claim, the minority of women would do that, but when they do it, at least there's some pushback there that said the man came along, he told us she's been slapping him 3 times a week for the last month, and it's why he left the house, or that kind of data just isn't collected. So then he has to assert it himself. There's no professional that backs him up. Like as I'd say my profession as social workers, we've let men down. We haven't taken care of you. And I think if you did an assessment of the entire social circuit, you'd find that there's very few doorways for men for care and for a place to record that information.
That's a very compelling statement you make. We've let men down. In what respect? Is it just in all quarters of this bias thing that we have?
Well, you said earlier about men not talking and bring forward this stuff. I am so used to men of all walks of life walking in our door and just talking about what's going on for their lives. And I ask them intimate questions. My staff are blown away because guys will share, and they do respond to services. We're seeing 100 guys a week at the Canterbury Men Centre. This should be available to men up and down the country. There are lots of special doors for women, and don't get me wrong, I'm glad they're there. But men have special places of need, and this is one particular issue where they need that care, and it links into so many other things. Like if we were taking care of men at this point in their lives, this might be the only time they need support from a social service of any kind. It might be 6 hours in their whole life. Why can't we give that to them? But we haven't done that. We haven't set up a service to do that yet.
But there is hope, because we're getting slightly better by even talking about the issues that men specifically face. And we've done that today on the program. I mean, it's slow and steady progress, isn't it? Well,
I've been involved in this for 20 years or so, and sadly I've done a similar interview in the past. So I'm hopeful of improvements. I think as a society we are getting more compassion and caring towards men. My agency in particular has had a lot of people give us lots of support. So there's really keen interest. But we need men's centres up and down the country. taking care of men. There's women's centers that have been going for 30, 40 years, along with women's health centers that, about 10 years ago closed off. So we've done a lot of special projects for women. We really should be focusing on taking care of men, and there's a lot of compelling reasons to do it. Never mind this breakup and the pain that comes with that and doing it better. Suicide in men, and I'm sure you've had that on this program as well. Guys need care, and we're not doing it.
I know we have things like the ministry for women, and I'm not suggesting we need a ministry for men as such, but do you think we need something? Because as you've just pointed out, the stats for suicide rates for men are higher than women. I don't think we need to play off the sexes, but do you think is there enough support as a whole in this country to support men across a wide range of issues?
Well, I'd say no, obviously.
Yeah.
But I think what it is that, I think a healthy system has advocates pushing every which way inside of it. If you think of that old paradigm, that old story about the elephant and the Indian men, the 10 different blind Indian men, what we have right now is a big chunk of that elephant isn't being touched. Nobody's pushing for men at a conscious level inside the systems to improve their outcomes.
Is that because they're too scared to, because they know there'll be a pushback? Harden up. Or why are we pushing for men? You've had it good for so many years. Is there that mentality going on?
I would say it's legacy issues, but I think it's a lot like women in business. Women in business have thrived, but they also need some extra support in there. Men in social work, they're 10, 20% of social workers, but they haven't actually formed these men's support services yet. And, though there's a willingness to let that happen, there isn't that kind of leadership from up above. There is, from down below, there's a formation at community level. I'm heartened by that response. But at a much larger political leadership level, we should be having some money tagged by the MSD towards supporting men in that particular situation. It totally addresses so many other needs inside the social services. And if you did an evaluation, if you did an audit of all the different services available out there, you'd find very few doorways for men. And that includes those critical ages between 20 and 40 with GP services, for example. You see men don't have a relationship with a GP because they don't need it. But at that time, when they're going through a depression resulting from, separation, for whatever reason, they don't have a relationship with their GP, whereas she may have gone on for the cervical screening, breast screening, the children, different ranges, and birth control, all that. So she already has that relationship going. Guys don't.
Interesting you talk about some of these charities that require these campaigns to get things going. Are we getting better? Because I know this month is Blue September month.
Oh, yeah.
Focusing on cancer that men get. So slow and steady positive means, or is it still a bit wish-washy?
It's at a ground level, that direct care for men, that guy who's going through that crisis now. If you go looking around in your area, guys, sorry, you're not going to find a lot to help you. That's just the way it is. Sure, Blue September, beautiful physical health, prostate cancer. Glad they're doing it.
But would still need help
direct
when it
services
comes to society and social issues too.
Yeah, a good clear flag on the ground telling guys this is a safe place for you to come. We're not going to presume when all of a sudden there's been a bit of back and forth between you and your wife that you're the one who's been the perpetrator, for example. Yes, we'll record that information, but we'll tell the whole story.
Just finally, we haven't really touched on the different needs and requirements why men are coming to see you and your staff at the Canterbury Men Centre. I'm guessing it's a range of issues, but is there one common theme that you could point to that happens?
No, it's actually
across the board.
It is a lot of those. It's a delight for me to watch because it's mostly guys going through a hiccup in their lives. They're just regular guys that just need somebody from outside the whānau to just give them a hand for a little while. We do that 1 hour check-in with them, make a plan, and then bang, they generally go off to a counselor. They see a counselor 6-8 times. They feel great. They're changed by that process. And, if we keep working the way we are, I'm expecting us to, if we've been going for 30 years, we would have touched a good quarter of the guys in Canterbury directly with our service if we'd been going that long. And women's centres up and down the country have been doing that kind of process. Women have had those services. This legacy for guys, we haven't created it yet.
Well, hopefully we will, and we should. Donald, it's nice to meet you. Thank you very much for your time, and thank you for the great service that you provide men in Canterbury.
Thank you.
Thank you.